Step into the world of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Where the essence of entrepreneurship is unraveled in its most authentic form. Stas Balanevsky serves as your guide on this journey of discovery and inspiration. In each episode, Stas brings together entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds to share their stories. It's not just about their victories, but more about the resilience and adaptability they've shown in the face of adversity. These narratives are more than just stories. They are lessons in courage, determination, and the relentless pursuit of success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, dreaming of launching your first venture, or an established business leader seeking new perspectives, Founders Dinner is your invitation to explore the transformative power of entrepreneurship. And now, without further ado, let's welcome the host of Founders Dinner, Stas Balanevsky.
Welcome to the Founders Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Stas Balanevsky, and I have the pleasure of having Neil Twa with me as my guest today. Neil, how are you today, sir?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming, and I want to jump right in, and I'd love to start with your entrepreneurial journey. Can you tell me sort of who you are, where you've been, where you're headed?
Yeah. Well, in short order, to not bore anybody with the details only my mom cares about, I basically busted on the scene after dropping out of college because I wanted to get into the e-commerce world, and the internet had just come online and no one knew anything about it. Pentium chips and Windows 3.1 became Windows 95, and everybody was like, we need a network and we need to do all this stuff. And I remember the university unpacking the first boxes, and I was helping them to, install it and learning on the fly and staying up and doing the manuals and playing with the computers because nobody else knew how to do it. But figured out that it was a fun thing to do and really got involved in it. But because there wasn't a lot of academia, there wasn't any training, there wasn't any way to know it. The other place that money was really being spent was in the corporate world. So I went ahead and dropped literally out of my music and business administration degree because I went to school on a full ride music scholarship and decided that I wasn't going to live in a van down by the river because that wasn't cool back then, but it's really cool right now. And so went off to the corporate world and spent the better part of 12 years in the corporate world. I got to see the inside of Sprint when the PCS mobile division launched. We helped launch the first mobile phone in Sprint, and spent about 5 years there going through a hyper growth situation inside of that mobile company. I think I was the 5,000th employee, and there was 80,000 when I left. We brought into IBM. IBM picked me up after a project that we had worked on in combination for a year, and the partner said, hey, we got some additional work for you if you want to come to work for IBM, and flew me out to Armonk, New York on a handshake, and I became an IBM employee. We defined it as I've been moved because I was traveling 2 to 3 times a week. Became a corporate road warrior for almost 5 years. Last year at IBM in 2006, I traveled almost 200 days that year. In 2007, we decided it was time to part ways. I met a girl and wanted to settle down and thought family and life were going to be more important, and had got engaged to get married in March of 2007. And by June, they had said, here's your early retirement or go to Argentina. And I said, no, thanks. Take my early retirement. I'm out. Always wanted to do the entrepreneurial thing. The world finally caught up. We finally went through the growth of the internet. Things have stabilized. I had understood more about what I wanted to do in the business and the world, et cetera. So I jumped out. And so for 5 years, I tried to figure out who I was as a business person who was not a corporate person. Very different, right? It's one thing to transition. It's another thing to realize that you have to wear all the hats, stay up late, be that guy. Everything around you is part of your business. And that's a very different way of thinking about it than I had been originally taught as I got into the corporate world, and discovered really for a while to go back to my roots of business and consulting. And so I set up a consultancy. And by 2010, I had 10 employees, quote employees. They were contractors working with me on a management consulting arrangement. And we had different projects we were working on. I actually subcontract back to IBM. I subcontract to both public and private, and did some work in the public and private sector. And then in the process of being freed up, because I had other people working for me, I got busy with affiliate marketing, which was just flipping people's products online and doing paid traffic, and discovered I had a pretty good aptitude for learning the process and the system, but I wasn't very good at making money at it yet. It wasn't until my 301st campaign that I actually started making money with it. And by the time I figured that out, I was making really good money. And fast forward 2012, I discovered Amazon because I was actually discovering the process of brand building and getting away from just flipping products and affiliate and actually moving into a brand owner. If you just follow the train of thought here, I was in the quadrants. I was moving from the corporate to the self-employed, self-employed to entrepreneur, entrepreneur to business owner, and now I'm an investor. So as I went from business owner into the investor, we built up these brands. We launched continualized brands. We own the brand process from beginning to end. We started 2012 on Amazon FBA, fulfilled by Amazon using their infrastructure. And that was a smart move because in 12 years, that's gone hyper ballistic in terms of its freight and movement and ships and just the whole infrastructure. It's a miracle the thing even works. But we used it to launch products and test products and then move products into direct to consumer channels. And have done that for the better part of 12 years and have grown multiple channels, multiple brands, 8-figure seller, top percentage of seller on Amazon and other channels. And have taught a few other people to come along for the ride through our management and consulting. And now we're in the business. We know where we're at in business. We're no longer really entrepreneurial, if you will, because we're in our drive. We know what we are good at. We know what we do. And we're hedgehogging, as Jim Collins says.
Nice.
And good to great. We're hedgehogging. And because of that, more opportunities have presented themselves to stay within our lane. And one of those is moving into the greater investment world of acquiring companies. We had set out to acquire quite a few companies years ago and decided to stop temporarily because we felt the market was overbuying at too high a price point. So we said, hold on, which was a good move because consolidation and capitulation always happens in new market economies. And that certainly happened in the space we live in. And now we're going back to look at companies that are more properly aligned. The seller buyer financing has changed again. So now we have more room and lateral room to move. We've got private equity groups that have raised the capital necessary that go to market, and we're going to try it now. We're going to acquire 5 companies this year. We're in the process right now of turning into the full investment side. And then in about 5 years, raise that up to a larger capital firm and sell it all off and then figure out what I want to do next. So that's really where I'm at right now.
That's fantastic. So I love that you were like one of the original guys with every step of the development of the internet. You were in web 1,
Yep.
web 2,
Yep.
right? The whole thing.
Yeah. Just playing the innovative vein of not fearing risk, feeling the fear and doing it anyways, and trying and failing. It's not all perfect. I destroyed a marriage in that process and learned humility at its foremost front. I crashed and burned a business by learning the boundaries of risk and reward and relationships and what those can lead to if you're not careful. So I have reinvented myself a couple times and lived a couple lives in my 48 years and seen some big ups and downs and know where I can risk and not risk. It's something you just have to do through experience before you get I tell my kids, you're never going to learn anything and gain any knowledge or wisdom without experience. So I'm just going to have to force you into experience.
That's so true.
How
old are your kids?
I have 4 daughters. My oldest just turned 16 last Sunday. I have a 14-year-old, a 12, and 11. So we had them all in 4.5 years.
Wow. Amazing.
And we had the first one the year after I broke out of IBM. We found out the same year I left, started our business, got married, and got pregnant, all in the same year of starting my business. So yeah, fun challenges.
Yeah. I blew up a business when we had our first child.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah. That was back in 1999.
Oh, that's always good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Isn't it great to talk to people that have seen the bottom of a bank account, like for real?
Well, I don't do business with people who don't, honestly. I will be very cautious to do anything with someone who's never truly risk failed or understood the boundaries of what they're capable of, what they know, and then of course the people that they commingle with, understanding the risks and variables of risk and boundaries is just an experience-laden maneuver. You can't theorize on it. You can't read a book about it. You have to actually go do it.
That is true. And part of this, actually the entirety of the mission of this podcast is to put some of those experiences into some sort of form, be it video, podcast, blog post, book, whatever this thing is going to become, and share those entrepreneurial stories, because when you're winning, it's super easy. Right?
It's always easy to sound like you're always winning on the internet. You can be anybody you want. I could be the Prince of Egypt on the internet.
That's right.
But the truth of the matter is the real stories that not everybody wants to hear, but that's the facts, right? It takes 17 years to an overnight success, right? You have to lay down the foundation and burden of experience, and you have to walk those processes before you can actually speak to them with integrity, which is a big part of business for me.
That's exactly it. It's really funny. I'm a member of a couple of peer groups, and with what I do professionally as an EOS implementer, the recurring theme is no theory, only experience shares.
That's right.
If someone says, I have a question, no one says, well, I think you should. The answer should always be, this happened to me, this is what I did, and this is what happened.
Or don't speak up
Or
if it's
don't
not.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Frankly, I've had a lot of opportunity to gain a lot of experience through being pig-headed and stubborn and never really knowing when to say no. See, I see no as a KNOW always. And it's whether or not you don't understand or I don't understand the concept. So we're not really to a no until there's a hell no. So at that point, it's a no. And that's why I would always continue to just keep pushing forward and keep innovating, keep testing things, keep asking questions, and just keep pushing boundaries until somebody says, hell no. And usually it's not going to be when you expect it or the reasons why, because at the end of the day, there are people who are going to tell you no, but they've never tried it. So they don't really know, they're just afraid of trying it. And that's not really an excuse for not trying anything. In fact, that's what we say around here is that opportunity begins at the end of your excuses. So if you're going to just excuse your way through everything, you're never going to learn. If you're never going to feel risk, you're going to have a lot of questions and everybody is going to be scamming you, then you're never going to have any success, right? So you got to be willing to risk a few things to gain some things, and experience is a byproduct of that.
Absolutely. So are you willing to tell us a story?
What kind of story would you like to hear?
I'm sure you got
a negative one, a recent one.
So a nursery rhyme. No, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a misread, a misstep, something where you had a fact pattern, thought this was the way to go, turned out to not be right.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us the story, tell us the lesson, and then the cherry on top is how you've applied that lesson in subsequent successes.
Yeah. So probably the biggest one, I could talk the relationship side, but it's gonna target purpose, and purpose is also a part of business, so I'll encompass that with the story. I got involved in a company after I got really good at the affiliate marketing, and those campaigns became really easy to me. And once the experience part of it unlocked, and I realized what I should do and what processes to repeat them by, making $1,000 days in profit wasn't that hard. So as that money accumulated and I decided what to do with it, an opportunity presented itself. I was a little naive in the awareness of who the people were, and I didn't do enough diligence into the process. Turns out the product and the idea were wonderful. The guys that were running it, on the other hand, were a little bit questionable, and I didn't finish that really big part of the due diligence. But the affect of that was I was willing to put some risk. I just didn't realize where the risk boundary was. And what I mean with that is everybody has some level of risk they're willing to go. Someone's 500 is different than somebody's 5,000. It's different than somebody's 500,000 or 5 million, right? Everybody has a different level of risk based on where they are in life, right? Or where they are at. And I didn't know where my boundary was. I should have said, okay, my risk level is at 500K and stopped. And if I'd done that, this would be a very different story. And if I have been willing to put the brakes on that and say, okay, if I don't see X after Y, I'm going to quit this, stop this, turn around and question whether or not I should be doing it. I got too leveraged in with too much capital. I got a little too emotionally connected to the product idea that it was going to be a changing or a game changer. I got a little too much into the inventor mindset and not enough into the innovation mindset, which was to move product to market faster, test the product, and then remaneuver the product as the customers or the product itself was being defined by the market. Instead, we spent too much time in product development and research and not enough time in the market. Okay. But these were risks that we defined very quickly, and it reshaped the way I'll explain how the outcome is now. But I invented a part of a product that has very cool communications and technology that no one will ever hear of. It's on a patent that no one's ever going to use. It's on a situation that I believe would be very impactful to today's power and consumption in the house and business, but it's never going to see the light of day. The end result was there was money coming in from investors, and there was money coming in from people that were putting in. I even got some family members involved in what we were doing, and unfortunately, they never really, I don't believe, intended to put a product in the market. I believe that I was really the only one who wanted to put that. And eventually, when I discovered that they were spending more money on themselves and other things in the business and not actually putting it towards product development, that's when I realized I had fallen into a trap. It wasn't so much that they were being nefarious, it's that I wasn't asking the right questions, or I didn't know what questions to ask. And because of that, I wasn't sure whether or not I should ask for the books, whether or not, and actually in all intents and purposes, as an investor, I had every right to ask for those things, but I simply didn't feel empowered to do it. And with that, realizing I had leveraged too much of my personal capital, too much of my personal business into it, and then realizing there was some questionable activities in the business that I shouldn't be a part of because of the way they were managing the investor funds, I went to a lawyer and I said, what do I do? I went and sought counsel from someone legally to understand what the implications were. And the first thing he said was, get yourself into an indemnification situation with them, however you can possibly do it. And we're going to file personal and professional bankruptcy in order to protect you from the implications of what they've done with these funds. You don't want to be involved with the next three-letter agency that most likely will get involved, because once this unleashes, you don't want to be involved with that. And I said, great, how do we do that? And so we did the process of a very annoying, very personal, very humbling experience of going bankrupt. Wow. It was a business strategy, but it also was a financial strategy to protect the remaining assets I had, which was not a lot at that point, because I'd gotten so heavily leveraged in the business. I pushed myself too far. And at the end of that, as the difficulties arose and our third child was coming along, my wife was pregnant, and they're taking the van out of the house at 10 o'clock at night and repoing the vehicle with all the kids' stuff inside of it, I had to answer for a lot of questions that I'd been hanging on to. Why were we paying for the bills to eat and not paying for the car? Kinds of questions. When it became very humbling as that part of that wall came down. But in a same way that bad things happen, there's always good around you if you can look and focus on it. Because our house was actually, in the business and not tied to us personally, it was not caught up in the bankruptcy, so the home couldn't be tainted with anything that was going on with that. So we'd done a few things correctly, even in the midst of a few problems. So we were fine in our house and didn't have to worry about that. But other assets and other things, including credit card debt and all that stuff, suddenly came running down on our head. The effect of that, of course, was challenging. And my wife, being my ride or die person that she is, was just like, we'll get through it. She's just this kind of person you don't meet very often when it comes to certain risk or whatever. I trust you. The situation will be fine. I trust God. We're going to be okay. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes life a little easier because I didn't have to fight her while fighting the rest of the world at that point. It turns out we had some medical conditions with her pregnancy that also put her on bed rest and created some difficult challenges. By the time the baby was born, she had some medical issues. And so with dealing with the bankruptcy and the medical issues and her going on to bed rest and then having challenges afterwards, forcing her to have a hysterectomy, was a very difficult situation where I suddenly played mom, I played dad, I played business guy, I played bankruptcy guy, I played all of this stuff all at the same time, which was quite stressful, honestly, and quite lonely many times. And then discovered in the process of that, she had a surgery to correct the issues from the pregnancy, and the cauterizing machine failed in the hospital. And instead of coming out after 2 days from what is normally a simple outpatient surgery, she was fighting for her life. She had lost 8 pints of blood. The cauterization failed, and so her chest has been filling with blood. And I was actually in the room when she coded the first time. And they tried to resuscitate her, hit her with too much Narcan, too much morphine, and that caused her to go back the other direction and forced her heart to stop. And so then they resuscitated her and then had to take her back into a surgery. That was the second time that she coded on the table, and they brought her back. And then they went in a third time in 36 hours because they couldn't find the bleed. So they took her back another time. What was a 2 to 3 day recovery became a 2-year recovery after that. And so I got to play dad and mom and business guy all in the midst of all that and finalize all that. So that was crazy time. But, the aspect of it is there was always something to be safe in that. And my faith became stronger in that. My walk with God became stronger. My resilience and became stronger. My mental fortitude actually became stronger. My surrendering and dependence less on the system and less on the idea of money and profit, which led me to the problems and making these really bad decisions, as I was too focused on the profit and the idea and not enough on the purpose. That's kind of the moral of the story here. And so I put profit above purpose. And if I had put purpose above profit, I probably would have seen some of these things a lot sooner and not become so heavily invested in the idea. And with that, I learned the differences in how to manage a business, grow a business, deal with investments and with funds, deal with people, deal with the relationships involved. The phrase keep it all, keep it small came out of that. So I'm very close, tight-lipped to who I actually do business with and in what capacity. And it was just a story that was very difficult for us and our family and then the business, but it also turned into a situation where I discovered my actual purpose, my business, my e-commerce, the things that I did actually came out of the back end of that purpose because once I translated it back around and once I humbled in that process, I was then willing to refocus my efforts on helping more people. And in the process of helping more people than just myself, because that was what was really happening at the end of the day before, I realized that the invention aspect of what I was trying to do was all about ego, all about self, all about I.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went back to the innovation side and I went back to the brand side and I went back to the things I knew at the root of my success, I started to help more people in that process. And in the process of helping them, they became successful. And by proxy, they gave me credit for helping them be successful. And that kind of helped lift me out of those trenches and created an opportunity to build brands and build some people up and create a whole different kind of model of business. While profit is required in a business, long story short, purpose for what I do is very different now.
Wow, what a story.
And she lived. I guess I should make the non-cliffhanger there that she did recover. She did live through that. It was very challenging, and we discovered a lot in the process. But my wife is alive, and we've been together for 19 years. And we have 4 beautiful daughters, and it all worked out okay. I guess I shouldn't have left that cliffhanger. I'm wondering if she died.
That's amazing. But, it's interesting. I have lots of friends that are founders, and we're all these kindred spirits. And the recurring theme of having a spouse that looks at the stuff that we get ourselves into and says, you'll be fine.
Yes.
It is one of those things. And it's interesting because it seems like there's a guy that I met that is a Navy SEAL, and he was in the coaching and training side of the SEALs, and he was giving a talk, and we asked him, what are the things that point to success of getting through BUD/S, right? Getting through Hell Week. And obviously they've done a bunch of research. And he said, okay, so there are really 2 things. He said one of them, which is really interesting, is the sort of the correlation between self-talk and perception of others being the same. So if your superiors say the same thing about you as your peers, as your underlings, and what you say about yourself, if there's consistency through all of those personae, there's a higher likelihood of success because you're not really telling anybody stories. You're not telling yourself stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, because a bunch of these are young men, it said relationship with your mother. He said people that have, and we sort of unpacked that. And he's like, you know what it is? It's somebody that has absolute undying belief without the need for any stats, any data, anything. I believe in this person. And as we age and as we marry and as we become these entrepreneurs that fly pretty close to the sun, occasionally melt our wings off and smash into the parking lot, having that person that has absolute belief in us, despite our best efforts to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Those are the people that seem to give all of us strength to just head down, carry on.
And they're always around you in some capacity. They're also in, if you're not careful, and this is a normalized process, if you tell people you're starting a business, you'll find out real quick who are the ones willing to root for you and who are the ones that are going to be lined up to take the first swing at you. Why are you doing that? That's a dumb idea. Why'd you spend this money? Oh, this isn't going to be great. And hopefully it's not somebody who's in your house or in a personal relationship. And my wife is a friend of mine before we got married, and we saw each other's pros and cons as friends before we got married. And I definitely think that's one of the benefits of this. And maybe the others can say something similar to that effect, and why their wives or spouses were just like, hey, we're going to be fine. We'll do this. I trust you. We're going to be okay no matter what happens. And it's a very calming, very rational aspect to have that localized community of trust, that family of trust that stands up with you, because trust me, you will find out who your friends are and what your family really thinks of you when you go bankrupt. There are worse things that can happen in the world to you than going bankrupt, but you will find out who the people are that trust you or want to avoid you or no longer want to be around you simply because they think you're a financial liability, even if you've asked them for nothing.
That's wild.
It's very telling. It's extremely telling. But it's something that I'm not recommending you do this, but if you run into those situations and you really want to know what your family and your spouse thinks, just go ahead and play a little prank on them and see how they react. Tell them the bank account's gone and see what happens. I'm not highly recommending that. That's probably not good marriage advice. But
no, probably not.
Probably not good advice. No, I wouldn't take that for a grain of salt. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
But now, like the purpose over profit thing, it's really a wonderful sentiment. And a scary one, right? Because there are times when people say, well, it's purpose. But at the end of the day, they're really afraid.
Could be. It could be a scarcity hiding behind an abundance mindset. The other aspect is I would look at that and say, what does your life represent about that? What do your actions represent more than your words? For me, I believe my actions represent what my words speak. I homeschool my daughters, have ever since they've been grown. My wife and I live on 50 acres in the country. We have a homestead. Our purpose has been our family above profits, meaning I've taken certain jobs, not taken jobs, not traveled in the last 17 years more than maybe 5 times away from my kids for a night. We've gone everywhere as a family. I've been at all their events. My purpose has been to keep my family a focal point of anything that does not force my business to take me away from them for things I cannot choose to do. So purpose has been driving them forward, driving the business and the realization that you don't need all the other things you think you might need in business to be successful or even make good money, and to still have a particular purpose. That gives me the opportunity to have my business as a mission to move people out of the matrix, to move them out of debt, to move them out of the debt slavery system they may be locked into, to move them out of areas of risk and scarcity they don't necessarily realize that they're in, and get them into a position of abundance, either through thinking or through the actionable activities that would lead to abundance, right? And actually getting plans of action and then leading it. If you want a lifestyle like mine, I can help you get it. It wasn't easy for me, but I can show you how to get there faster. If family is a focus, if you want to buy back your family time, if you want to spend more time with your family, if you'd rather take them on vacations than go alone and make up vacations whenever you want to, if you'd like to get away from employees, I have no more employees. I used to have 12. I got rid of the employees. Now I have people who are working in joint ventures as business owners, operating or strategically acquiring or running companies that I purchase, who are in positions of power because they run them. I train them how to run them. They become empowered operators, and then they run the businesses and do the joint ventures with us. So I don't have employees. I have very strategic partners. So that frees me up to do these kinds of podcasts, to run my own podcast, to spend time with my kids, to go swimming this afternoon before I came in here, and to do the things that are more purpose driven, which is the people who will be with me at the end of my day, not the U-Haul full of crap that I'm going to drug behind me and say that's my life legacy, because it's not. My life legacy lives in my kids, my family, and the purpose that goes beyond me.
Well said. So true. And so not what the media are portraying is success.
No, it's very opposite. And I feel like a sign from the salmon swimming up the stream and waiting for the bears to try to take a bite out of me. And trust me, they do, because I think it's insincere. It's not authentic. It's just a ploy. It's a marketing gimmick. But it's not. It's really my life. And if I just want to turn off the internet and disappear, I can. That's real power, right? That's, to me, that's real wealth. And it doesn't come from the riches. It comes from the mindset. And that was something I used to live in, a very scarce mindset. And I know, because it almost crashed my business. It almost crashed everything. Abundance is realizing there is a more than enough of everything out there. It just may not be accessible to you right now in this moment. It might not be in the place that you are. It may be in a place you need to get to. People say money's not here and inflation is a problem. I will tell you there's money more than ever going in different directions, flowing in different areas that might not be near you. You might not recognize because you think people aren't buying cars, but they sold the most Ferraris last month that's ever been sold in history. Okay, there's money moving all the time. It just changes. It's like a river. It flows. And if it feels like it's not close to you now, did you move or did the river move? Because sometimes we move. We move in our mind, we move in our mindset, we move in our situation. And so much of whatever you do in business, from my experience, whether it's real estate or business or financial or podcasting or e-commerce or whatever, is all about mindset. It all comes down to whether or not you believe there's abundance in the business that you are working and gathering, and that part of that is available to you. Okay. Once you get to that, the scarcity scales come off your eyes and the opportunity goes. Now, the thing that people don't understand when I say that is the timelines, because they always want it now and they're not really willing to wait for it. And I will tell you, if you can do something for 3 to 5 years no one else is willing to do, then you can live like no one else can afterwards. You just have to be willing to do it. And my really good friend says, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. If you want him rolling and laughing on the floor, tell him your expected timeline. Right? Right. Because in the essence of time, you have to realize the same people in the same situation always comes up. Well, I don't have time for that. And I will say that is wrong. That is actually scarcity. You have the time. What you're actually doing incorrectly is not prioritizing it. So you should actually say, that's not a priority for me right now. Very different. One's scarcity, one's empowered, right? Okay, so if I say that, then I have to own that, which means if your children come to you, and instead of saying, well, daddy doesn't have time to do that right now, and instead you look them in the eyes and say, you're not a priority for me right now. You decide which one actually hits harder.
Right. And they're the same thing.
They are, but how is
Right.
it going to be received?
Oh my gosh, completely differently.
Completely differently. So tell me you can't look them in the eyes and tell them it's not a priority. What could you do differently? You
There's
always have a choice. I had a choice. You may not like the outcome, you may not like what has to happen. To keep my
Mhm.
business going in 17 years, I've had to make choices that were not popular. I've had cars repossessed out of my garage. I've had problems that were not all really easy to deal with. But instead of looking at the wall and saying, well, that's not surmountable, I looked at the wall and said, that's a challenge.
Mhm.
That's something I
I
can
saw
go up and over and under and around. It's just a challenge.
I saw this really cool video. I forget where, but it was great camera angle of a lacrosse coach standing on a sideline talking to a bench of kids. You could see kids were playing lacrosse behind him. He said, "All right, boys, pull out your phones. I know you have them with you. Look at your screen time. If your screen time is more than your stick time, that's why you're sitting."
Lots of opportunities. You just are not prioritizing the time
Right.
correctly. I've got pharmacists who have kids who work 40 hours a week who have come back and are building six-figure businesses because their priority is now to no longer say to their family, you are not a priority. They have made the shift. They've gone from scarcity to abundance, and now there's no stopping them. Pretty soon they're going to leave all of that behind, right? And they're going to be in a position of abundant thinking. And then they become more powerful and more aware of their life and more, as you mentioned, the system that has encapsulated them into this place with the media and the thinking and the scarcity and the fear. They're outside of that makes them extremely dangerous.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny. We as implementers teach that abundance mindset in our community, right?
Yeah.
Because as new implementers spin up, it feels like competition and it gives you some head
Mm.
trash and it gets a little scary, but you muscle through it because you know that there's more than enough business out there. And if
There
you're
is.
kind to each other, it
You
works.
just can't serve two masters. In the country out here, we have a saying, he said, you can't ride two horses with one ass. So pick one.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's
Pick
right.
one. If you're going to stay in the W 2 world, then stop making excuses for why you can't get out of it. If you want out of the W 2 world, stop making excuses and start doing something. If you got yourself in a business with too many employees and you're done with the employee headache, then you need to make a change. You have to make a conservative effort. It's not going to be popular and you may not be the fun guy doing it, but one way or another, if your purpose is better than the profit that just holding you into that system and is forcing you to stay in there, you always have a choice. You just have to deal with the outcome, and that's mindset. You'll have to accept the positive or negative outcome of your decision and own it.
That's the
And that's a
lesson.
lot of things that I think people acquiesce. I think that's why they become post turtles. They acquiesce. They want someone else to move them off the post. Oh, well, Neil, I came to you to get motivated. No, you didn't. I'm not here to motivate you. I'm going to demotivate you. I'm here to do something very different for you. I'm here to break you out of this nonsensical thinking. The only way I can get you taught on how to become a better business builder or even understand e-commerce or Amazon or any other channel of mechanism with sales is that you are going to be willing to learn it on your own. You're going to be unstoppable. You're going to say, okay, I want this when I want it. I got to get it done. I got to get there. You're going to go the other direction. You're going to change your purpose. And if that is buying back time with your family, more power to you, because that's what I think is most important. And most important thing missing in our culture right now is dads actually leading their family in purpose.
Yep, it's funny. I met another guy in my business. He holds the record for the most sessions in a year, and I went to one of his talks because every quarter we all get together
Yeah,
and we try to learn from each other. And he started his talk with people ask me what I'm on, and I'm on purpose.
I'm on purpose. I like
I'm
that.
like,
Borrow that phrase from your friend. I'm on purpose.
he
If you don't
is.
have the resources, be resourceful. That's what Mark Cuban says. If you don't have the resources, be resourceful. Oh, I can't do that. I don't have the money. Be resourceful. Money is everywhere.
Yes,
It's actually not purpose and focus that you have because the money is everywhere. If you had
that's
purpose
right.
and focus, you'd figure out how to make the money go. You'd figure out how to make the money work and you'd figure out how to get the business done. So really you're focusing on the wrong problem, which again is scarcity, right? And we don't rise to the goals we set, but we instead fall victim to the systems we put in place, right? And if the system you've put in place, you may be being victimized by it to the point where your brain is so screwed up that it makes it very difficult for you to even accept some of the things we're talking about today.
True story. So I guess the lesson for budding entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs that have hit a ceiling, entrepreneurs that are struggling is to zoom out a bit and
Take
figure,
action.
yep, figure out your purpose and take action.
Imperfectly, I say, and something perfect will happen along the way. But without action, you will get nowhere. If you're sitting around going, and waiting for the universe to bump into me and do something, it's never going to happen. You have to start moving for something to bump into you. So take some action, even imperfectly.
That said way better. Normally, I say to people, you know what happens to the guy that stops running in a zombie movie?
Yeah.
He's the first guy that gets eaten. Make
Yeah, after people are
moves.
like, "Oh, all I have to do is outrun you." And it's like, no, you don't. You have to outrun my bullet, because all I need to do is take you out and then I'm good to go.
That's right.
I don't have to outrun you.
That's well
Yeah.
said.
Purpose and profit come forward. And then growth, scale, opportunity, the other things unlock themselves. But here's the thing about all that, really, at the end of the day. Find someone else to help before you help yourself. You will find that the things you think about, the things you worry about, the things you're concerned about are all going to be really self-related, egotistical, power-driven, need-driven, scarcity-driven. But if it's your family and your kids you need to help them first. If it's somebody else you know, help them. Do it for no other reason than to just be helpful. Then you will discover that you have a lot of blessings. If you got a house, then the homeless probably envy you. If you got food on your table, then the hungry people envy you. Okay? There's a lot of things you have blessings for in your life you need to be grateful for, and stop realizing that you have infinite amount of time in which to make these decisions and act them. You have a certain amount of time on earth. What's it worth?
Hmm.
What's it worth?
A buddy of mine came up with a TV show long time ago. He called it 37 million minutes. He said, because on average, that's all we have.
So many minutes, so many heartbeats, so much
Yep.
action. Yeah.
Really cool.
Do not be afraid to risk. Ask yourself, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways was a book from Susan Jeffers. It really helped me change some thought processes in the way I ask simple questions about things, right? What's the worst that can happen? I've run into the worst things. My wife died on the table in front of me. I thought I was going to raise 4 kids under the age of 5 by myself. When she disappeared to that last surgery, I thought I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. What's the worst that can happen? Right? When they took the money, they took the house, there was nothing left, had $296 in our bank account. What's the worst that was going to happen? We weren't going to end up homeless on the street. We had family. We had people that we knew. We had friends that would take us in. Okay. What's the worst that's going to happen? You have really everything to gain by risking something, and you'll gain nothing if you risk nothing.
True.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, that's a heck of a story, and thank you for sharing it, because that takes a lot of bravery to share that story. So I'm really grateful that you would do that, because what's gonna help someone.
I believe it will. I've seen it in the past. Yeah. I think if anybody is willing to try something and fail up, it is just a matter of time until they figure out how to make it successful for themselves. I've seen people be successful in all the craziest things they could come up with. There's so many opportunities out there. And I think some people just get caught up in that idea that there are so many opportunities they don't know what to do. Pick one. Focus on it.
So when one of my 3 subscribers actually watches this and wants to, maybe 4, but
4.
But if anyone does listen and does want to reach out and say thanks for making an impact, would that be all right?
Absolutely. Anytime. If they just want to talk for a little bit, I'm happy to talk.
Awesome. So I'll make sure that your contact details are in the description of the podcast. Excellent. And I'm so grateful to have met you and you sharing your story with us, because there's lots of takeaways for me. I need to listen to this a couple more times to take some notes, because there's so many different things going off in my head. So many things that are intuitively clear, but really need some action applied to them. I commit to changing some of the things that I'm doing based on what you taught me today. And I'm really, really grateful.
Wonderful. Well, that's wonderful to hear. And I received that, and I thank you. And I'm glad we had the time to speak together. I've been honored to come on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a ton. And with that concludes this week's episode of the Founders Dinner podcast. For those looking to connect with Neil, his link is going to be in the description. And this is Stas Bolanevsky signing off. I'll see you all next week. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Founders Dinner. Stories of entrepreneurial wins, losses, and lessons. Once again, We've journeyed through the inspiring and challenging world of entrepreneurship with Stas Balanevsky, uncovering stories that illuminate the resilience and adaptability at the heart of success. Each narrative shared today is a testament to the unyielding spirit of our entrepreneurial guests, providing lessons in courage and determination. We hope these stories have not only entertained, but also inspired you. Whether you're taking the first steps in your entrepreneurial journey or are a seasoned leader in the business world, Founders Dinner is more than just a podcast. It's a community of learning, inspiration, and connection. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insightful episodes and join our vibrant LinkedIn community to continue the conversation, share experiences, and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. Until next time, keep embracing the entrepreneurial journey. This is Stas Balanevsky, thanking you for being a part of the Founders Dinner family. See you at the next dinner.